to Secondary Treasures, Unlocking Your Future, the show that features all the wonderful secondary programs in St. Lucie Public Schools. We are thrilled to have with us today some guests regarding Mosaic Digital Academy, our K-12 full-time virtual school where students can learn from home, as well as a school that features part-time enrollment for other students. Let's welcome our guests today. We have our Coordinator of Virtual Education for St. Lucie Public Schools, Ms. Jeanne Ziemba. Welcome.
Thank you.
We have a student who is a senior at Mosaic Digital Academy, Delaney Asher.
Hi.
Thank you for being here today, Delaney. And we have a teacher, Ms. Alison Thabit.
Hello.
Thank you and welcome. Okay. Let's start with you, Ms. Ziemba. You have been an employee in St. Lucie County for quite some time. Before you were involved with virtual education. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I have elementary ed degree from FAU. I have taught elementary for over 15 years in St. Lucie County. Just after that, I earned my master's degree in library science at Nova Southeastern and enjoyed a great career as a school librarian in St. Lucie County. Right after that, I came to the district office to work in the instructional technology department. That was a lot of fun. Get to work with teachers and teach them how to use technology to impact their lessons. Led some action research associated with that to help identify, which technology tools are best and that really truly help deepen knowledge with technology. And then I got my ed leadership degree through American College of Education, and here I am.
All right. So you have a really rich background that you bring to virtual education. And now, like I said, you are the coordinator of virtual programs. And one of the hats you wear is the administrator of Mosaic Digital Academy. And I know you came on board when we were planning that new school. What was the experience like of opening a brand new school from scratch that was also extremely unique?
Very unique. Unlike just opening up a regular brick and mortar school, our path was not really charted. So we, as a team, decided to look at some of the virtual options around the state as well as around the country. And most of the virtual programs that we were seeing were really strictly virtual. And so we brainstormed as a team to think about what types of brick and mortar experiences do we really want to see how we can incorporate for our virtual students. And so we wrote a mission statement to make sure that we would really truly embed some of those live experiences that we felt were really important to student learning as well as for their social and emotional growth. So that's kind of what we did.
All right, so you're really talking about how Mosaic Digital Academy, although it is a virtual school, it is different from other virtual options. How do you think it's different? What distinguishes it from some of the probably more well-known virtual options for families?
We consider our virtual program an enriched virtual model. We have local teachers. That's an important aspect. We have teachers that actually have live days. They're not just sitting at home in their pajamas teaching behind a computer. They actually have in-person presence in the online classroom as well as in our live facility. We have a beautiful facility. We're over on the campus of Allapattah Flats K-8, beautiful technology-rich school. And we make sure that we are creating live experiences for the students so that it really does embed a deeper content understanding for they're really making that connection from the online lessons to their live experiences. So we feel like that's exactly what's needed.
Well, I know firsthand that you are doing a fantastic job with all of that. So let's talk to one of our students who can tell us more about that. Delaney, I understand that you are a senior, which means you're graduating on June 2nd.
Yes, ma'am.
From Mosaic. And you shared with me that you've been in the program for 3 years. How would you describe for us what it's like to learn through virtual education?
It's definitely different than brick and mortar school, but it's a wonderful journey because not only people have the assumption with virtual school that you just stay at home all day, but like Ms. Ziemba said, they have live days. So you can come in, you can interact with your teachers, and you can also interact with the other students, which is amazing. And when I started virtual, that was one of the things that I was really nervous about, staying not in touch with any other student figure. So when I heard about the live days, I was like, yes, finally, I can go in and talk with other kids, see what they think of virtual school, and it's been amazing so far.
Well, that's great. What made you decide to attend a virtual school in the first place, and was Mosaic your first virtual school?
My dad got an invitation in the mail. That's how we heard about Mosaic, and my dad called me, said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "I can stay in pajamas all day and I can do school from home. I'm 100% okay with the idea." Called my mom. My mom said, "We'll talk about this later." And within an hour, my dad called my mom back and said, "I signed her up." And my mom said, "Then you can deal with it."
All right.
And now that 3 years later, my mom does bring me to the Alapata Flats campus. And when they were stationed at the district offices, she brought me there as well.
Right. When the school first opened, it was actually housed in the St. Lucie County School District office. So you talked about a lot of things that you love about it, staying in your pajamas, live days. What has been the best part for you so far?
The best part about all of it is having the support system and feeling like you're the only student, because when you're at brick and mortar school, you're 1 out of 25, and you don't feel as if you get that one-on-one time with the teacher to really answer your questions. And if you're like me, you have a hard time raising your hand and asking the questions you want to ask, because you think that somebody else is going to judge you based on what you're asking. So the teachers give you a lot of support saying, "Ask us anything. If you don't understand this, but other students understand this, just ask us, we'll explain it to you."
Wow, so you really are taking advantage of the mission that we set, which was all about personalization.
Yeah.
So we're so glad to hear it come to life like that.
Yeah.
So you're telling us about the wonderful things. Have there been any challenges, or if not for you, are there any things that you would tell other students to think about if they're thinking about virtual school?
One of the challenges I had was staying on pace. And that's hard for a lot of people, especially if they don't have the motivation to do it. It's not that I didn't have the motivation to get up and do school. It was just, I have two options: do school or lay on the couch all day and watch television. And sometimes that one option of laying on the couch got the best of me. And my advice for any students that want to join the virtual program is your pacing charts will be your worst enemy, but your parents' best friend. And because my mom, she checks off the pacing chart as well. So even when I don't check something off, she'll know immediately. So it's, yeah, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. That's my word of advice.
All right. So you are really talking about the responsibility that you had to develop, some really good characteristics that you had to develop to be successful. Excellent advice for other students. Let's talk to Ms. Thabit a little bit, Alison.
Hello.
I know that you teach a lot of elementary students, but can you tell us all of the subjects that you teach and what you teach for Mosaic?
For elementary, I teach 4th and 5th grade. So just like a brick and mortar teacher, I'm responsible for all of the content for 4th and 5th grade. And then I also teach 6th grade. I use a different platform for 6th grade than I used for 4th and 5th grade. And I only teach 3 subjects in 6th grade: language arts, world history, and science. I don't know why that left my mind. But I do have all the same students, pretty much, my same full-time students in 6th grade. So that's nice. I've been able to really develop nice relationships with my parents as well as my students.
Right. Well, you mentioned parents, and Delaney mentioned how important her mom is in the process, and her dad. Could you tell us more about the role of the parent, especially since you teach the elementary students?
Yes, and again, just like in a brick and mortar school, the parent is the learning coach, so they are going to take a stronger role in working with the students like an elementary teacher would. And as the students go to middle and high school, the teacher takes less of a role and the student becomes more independent. So my elementary teachers, my elementary learning coaches, they take a very strong role, and they really need to, again, we have a student right here who said the couch is very, very calling to her. So the parents need to take that role to keep the students on target, but also to teach the student and help them if they're misunderstanding something, and to reteach something when they're tested on it and they finally struggle. Although I'm always there as support, and I can work with the students on a live day in person, or we can meet in a virtual classroom that's scheduled, or they can call me and say, this Common Core math, I didn't learn this way when I was in school, can you help me? And we can just open up a classroom and have a spur of the moment tutor session right there. And sometimes I'm tutoring the learning coach, and sometimes I'm tutoring the student, or both.
Right, and one of my favorite parts has been when I've attended the training for the parents. I know you've done training before for how to be a learning coach, and I think that's really important. I know, and I knew you before you were teaching in Mosaic, because you have taught in brick and mortar traditional school settings, and you have also been a trainer for teachers in St. Lucie County schools in the past. Now that you're teaching virtually and coming in for the live days, what would you say is the most rewarding part for you as a professional educator?
Well, I love teaching virtually and working with my students, but when I get to work with them live in a small setting where it can be a very small group or it can even be individual, I can really individualize what they need to work with. I can change up how I'm teaching, use a strategy that's more effective for that student if they didn't understand the way that the platform presented the content. Or I can also have where I have a small group and I can give them group activities where they're working together and learning from each other. So I'm still encouraging these students who may be home alone with just their parent all day or one sibling to really understand how to work with other students. And live days are the days you get up and you're like, yes. And you don't have some of the, because it is a small group, if I can be very honest, you don't have some of the difficulties of a brick and mortar school. You really get to focus on teaching and not some of the other things that get in the way. So that just makes teaching so much more fun. So much more effective, I believe, too.
Well, that's great. You've always been successful. I asked Delaney advice that she would give to other students. What advice do you give to families when they are considering virtual education?
Virtual education is going to take an effort from the entire family in many different ways. You may have to give up a piece of a living area to create an educational foundation, a site where all of the work is housed. Other people in the house may need to be quiet during some learning time. And then also the parent is going to need to be really committed to ensuring, as Delaney talked about, that their children are staying on pace and reaching out to the parent or the teacher or both all together when they need help, when they need reteaching.
Okay, so you're talking about some really important conditions for success. Is there anything else that you've noticed in terms of which students tend to be more successful in virtual?
I think that one of the things that I found that's most important is that the family creates a schedule and sticks to the schedule. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a traditional schedule, but they need to create it and they need to commit to it. As Delaney referred to, you're drawn to that couch. You need to remember that, yes, I have a goal today of completing these lessons and I need to do it at this time, even though I might not feel like it right now.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go back to Ms. Ziemba. I know you've heard this many, many times. How do you know the students are actually doing the work? How do you hold the students accountable for that?
That's a great question, and it is actually two parts. For elementary, with the learning coach being a pretty strong role. The teachers, the teachers of record typically are very heavily involved in progress monitoring, just like they would in a brick and mortar. They use the same types of tools, Easy CBM, Portfolio. So those are very important because those are in the student's writing. We know how the student is doing completing the work. And through those live lessons, the synchronous lessons means the teacher is in the classroom online at the same time that the students are there. And so when the teacher is presenting, it's an engaging lesson. And so that engagement requires that the student responds. And when there's difficulty or the teacher sees that the student is not grasping those concepts, strategies can be applied pretty quickly. And that's part of progress monitoring as well. Students have their own logon. Parents have theirs separate. That's very important. So that progress monitoring for the elementary really is key. For middle and high school, quite different because all of their content is online. We use plagiarism detection tools that will actually detect whether the student is copying either another student's content or something from another source online or otherwise. From the very beginning, we make sure that students learn how not to plagiarize, really important skills. And I think that that's important for whether you're virtual or brick and mortar. It doesn't matter because I think that that's a pretty important thing that I think our students are not really understanding fully. And so we teach that, reteach that, reteach that. And when we do determine that someone did plagiarize, it's not a gotcha. It's this is another opportunity to reteach this, this how not to plagiarize, and really kind of going back and seeing what is your schedule like. Are you waiting to the last minute? Because that's what happens. Students wait to the last minute. They're not following their pacing guide. And so when they're not following their pacing guide and they're not planning for the assignments that are coming up, they do get backed into the corner. And then they'll revert to the cheating behavior. And I think that in most cases, probably 99% of the cases, students didn't want to cheat. And they're doing it because they really didn't plan well. And so we start from the very, very beginning at their orientation, teaching them how to create a schedule that works for them. We don't tell them to start school at 8 o'clock and to be done at 2 o'clock. We just tell them how many hours they need to allot for their courses and to make sure that they stick to that schedule. So very important to stick to the schedule.
And some of that goes back to your media specialist background.
Oh, yes.
Those are lessons you used to teach as a media specialist.
Right, and I think that because I have that background, it's pretty easy to be able to investigate, and so I do have to investigate some of those cases. And I think that it's just really important for us to make sure that we're also sharing with our students the digital resources that are available in St. Lucie County. We have World Book Online, which has already embedded those cite your sources. So every single article that's found on World Book Online, at the very bottom of that article, it already gives a source citation, so students can actually already cite their sources within their paper. Gale Online Databases, fantastic resource that we also have here in St. Lucie County. So the same skills that I would have taught in a library classroom, I'm able to impart that information to my teachers, and they can share that information.
Right. And you were talking about students being held accountable for the learning. They also have to take all of the same standardized tests that our other students take because Mosaic is a public school.
They do. We had a full schedule for testing, just like all the other schools. We're actually testing all of our virtual programs. We have St. Lucie Virtual as well as Mosaic Digital Academy. And so we created our schedule. Students came in for their testing, and although they didn't have to stay for the rest of the day, they stayed during their testing and were able to go ahead and be released and go home. But they did have to come for multiple times. They do have to have their statewide assessments, district assessments as well. EOCs, very important for them to be prepared for those and to be able to take those and to match their skills to just like their peers in other schools. There was one other point I was going to make, but actually our students have to take module exams, and there's another way of assessing our students that we do in virtual discussion-based assessments.
Right.
And we really feel like that's a very positive type of assessment. It's because it's more like a conversation.
Right.
The conversation with the student, checking to see their knowledge, to see if they really did complete that module. Do they know enough to be able to take the exam? And so you can't fail a DBA, a discussion-based assessment. but the teacher can determine whether the student really is ready to take the module exam, and if they're not, the teacher just simply asks them, go back and cover these topics before you get the password for the exam, and so that we really feel like that's really helped the students be able to be more successful because they're responsible for their learning.
And those discussions actually have two benefits. One, the teacher can check to see if the student is actually accomplishing the work on their own, but also they can tell if the student struggles with tests. They give them another way to show what they've learned. So
exactly.
I'm really glad that that is embedded in it. I want to clarify something. Everybody has talked about live lessons, and then there's been a little bit of discussion about face-to-face. Can you explain the difference? Because live lessons, it's still virtual, and you're talking about synchronous lessons.
Okay, so live lessons, actually, there's two kinds of live lessons,
right.
So thank you for letting me explain that. Live lessons online, that is a synchronous opportunity for students to enter the online classroom. There's a web conferencing tool that they use. It's Blackboard Collaborate right now. The teacher will set up a time that the students will meet in that classroom. All the students log in, boop, 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 all their names pop up. The teacher can welcome the students, and they can use this tool to have those live lessons. And so those lessons are actually designed very much like they would in a regular brick and mortar school. If the teacher is using the chalkboard in the regular classroom, the teacher is using the whiteboard in the Blackboard Collaborate room. If the teacher wants to use a PowerPoint to demonstrate some content, they'll simply load a PowerPoint so that all the students are seeing the same content. If the teacher wants to use a digital tool, they can simply do a web tour and everybody's following along and reading. And so it's kind of another way of teaching. So.
Okay.
And then the live lessons in our facility, teachers will actually meet the student in our facility in person. And so those lessons, there might be a workshop, there might be lab exploration days. We also have clubs, so the students might actually be presenting, for instance, book clubs. We had the young ones bring in their books and their dioramas, so they got a chance to tell their classmates about their book, and lots of different reasons why we might have it in person over the online classroom and vice versa.
All right. So we've talked about personalization and the nature of Mosaic Digital Academy, and we've heard you talk about face-to-face lessons and labs, and I know you have a guidance counselor. Could you tell us how your families really come to know you, what opportunities, and also about field trips?
Okay, so we love when our families are in our facility and we get to meet with our families. We try to make sure that we are creating not just learning activities and learning experiences, but also social experiences. And so we do get to know our families. One of the very favorite things that we get to do with our students is have a meetup in tradition. And that's been a very traditional thing that we've done. We might stop for ice cream at one of the local shops and then go across the street to town center, and the students will bring balls and jump ropes and frisbees, and they'll get to know each other as well as parents. Parents will get to know each other and talk, and they meet with the teachers, and we get really to know who they are.
And I think you actually brought some slides to show some of the trips that you've done and some of the activities that you have. You want to tell folks what they're seeing here?
This right here is our USDA open house. This was a fantastic experience for our students because other high schools also participated as well as the community. So this was a great opportunity to see our students interacting with other people in the community as well as the scientists that were at the USDA Center. This is the Elliott Museum. I believe this is the genome project that Mrs. Carr took her class to. This was a lot of fun. And I believe this next picture that's coming up is a group shot from our Tradition Town Center. We had so much fun with playing Frisbee and having all the learning coaches get together and talk with the teachers and each other and share their struggles. This is a senior trip that the senior sponsors took our students to Brevard. I think that was Brevard Zoo. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. So thank you for bringing those pictures. I think it makes it real for people to be able to see. And Delaney, have you taken advantage of the field trips, live lessons, labs, any of that?
I have. The first live lesson I ever had was with Miss Kiefer and Mr. Monroe at Treasure Coast High School. So my dad took some time out of his schedule and took me there. And the cool thing about it was that I had not really met them, so to say, yet. And this was an opportunity for them to meet me and find a way to incorporate different techniques on how I learn, basically. And Miss Kiefer, she knows to push me to my limits because she knows I can do my best. Thank you, Miss Kiefer. And Mr. Monroe, who I had for biology, I think, he knew that I was better when it came to diagrams instead of actual like word problems, so to say.
Okay.
And the field trips that we've taken, we took one to kind of like the Marine Life Observatory in Stewart.
I remember that one.
Yeah. We got to feed the stingrays, look at the sharks, learn some information about them. And the picture that was up at the Beverage Zoo, the
Brevard Zoo?
Yeah. The senior trip. I did not go because I am very afraid of heights, so zip lining wasn't technically my thing. But we also, for seniors, we went to Benihana's. And that was interesting because I got to meet someone else who I had not met yet. And yeah, these last 3 years, I'm definitely going to remember them.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you at your graduation and handing you that diploma. Ms. Ziemba, I don't want to end today's show without mentioning that St. Lucie County Public School students who are not enrolled at Mosaic can also experience your wonderful school through part-time. Can you tell folks about that?
I can. We just this year added part-time virtual for 6th through 12th grade, and so students that are in any of the brick and mortar schools in St. Lucie County can actually take a course with us. Typically, students might take a course with Florida Virtual School, and they would have a Florida Virtual School teacher who is somewhere in the state. But with our program, we are a franchise of Florida Virtual School, and we do have local teachers offering tutoring and so forth after school. And so it gives those students an opportunity to be able to have that local experience with teachers here. They get struggled with a particular subject, and so any of the students in the school's 6th through 12th grade can take a part-time course with us.
And all they need to do is ask their school guidance counselor.
They do, yep.
Now, to end the show, can you share with parents who might be interested about how they enroll and when the enrollment period is?
I can, sure. Right now, we're in the middle of an enrollment period. We started April 1st to July 15th, so that's our deadline. So parents need to go ahead and give us a call at our school, Mosaic Digital Academy. I believe we have the number on the screen.
Fantastic.
And so we're happy to answer any of their questions if they want to give us a call.
Okay, thank you all for being here. For additional information, please visit www.stlucieschools.org. Thank you for joining us.